Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome this morning to Herod Universalist Unitarian Church. We are so glad that you are here with us in our sanctuary. If you happen to be with us on Zoom, or if you happen to be watching this video at some point in the future. We are so excited for you to be here and to connect with us. A few announcements and instructions before we begin worship today. The first is to remind you that we are a vibrant and active community, and as such that there are many things going on, and we want to make sure that you can avail yourself of those opportunities that you are interested in. So if on one side is your order of service, on the other side are announcements relative to things that are going on here at the church. Please make sure that you check them out. Of note, the Sanctuary for the Senses series that we did previously, we're doing another iteration of that, so more information there is about that. And our summer camps, our 2025 registration for our summer camps began this week. So if you have kids, in your life, if you have friends who have kids who might be interested in our Peace Camp, or in our first ever Pride Camp, which is for LGBTQ youth who are 13 to 18. Information about that is in this order of service. So before we get to the nuts and bolts of things I want you to think about or be reminded of before the service, I did want to draw your attention to something or speak about something which you might have noticed. As you were coming in, you might have noticed that our We Believe banner that is right at the entrance of the church seems to be falling apart. You might not know why that is, because you were just hopefully paying attention to driving and not so much the sign as you came in. But that sign is not just degrading naturally. It was vandalized this week. It was slashed on both sides. We have temporarily sort of bound it back together while we decide what to do about that. But I think that we do want to just highlight that we find ourselves in times where the values of our church that we express outwardly sometimes finds us in a place of conflict with our neighbors. And that does not mean that we are not going to express those values, continue to assert those values, continue to support those values, but that we do that in a context that is not always receptive to our core values as you use. That should, I hope, bolster us to continue to express those core values, not dissuade us from doing the hard work of being principled public people when it comes to the things which matter most to us. And that is the inclusion of all people in the life of this church and in the life of our world. So, I wanted you to know that, and I also wanted to thank you for being people who believe in what we will believe and to believe it out loud and proudly and persistently. So, with that in mind, we are about to turn to worship, but I do want to just highlight a few announcements that might be important to you. The greeter from the board is whom today? Roger, Roger is in the back, so Roger's very excited to be the greeter from the board today. If you are new to our congregation, have questions about our congregation, have questions about anything, or even just haven't ever had a tour of our church, Roger is happy to assist you in all of those ways. We will encourage you to turn off or put on to airplane mode your phone. That isn't just so that we can have the best experience together, that's part of it, but it is also to sort of free up technological and bandwidth space so that our technology runs with less effort as we go through worship. You should also have received a card. Raise your hand if you have. You should have received two pieces. In addition to your order of service, you should have received two cards. One which is like a pink or blue index card, and the other is a card with a bit of instructions. Raise those if you have them. Let me see that you have them. Yep, okay. Very good. Does anyone need those two items? Okay. the ushers will come forward and make sure that you have those too. There is a point in the service where we are asking for your questions. There are some instructions here on the cards, but the cards are there for your questions to be used during the dinner conversation between Jen and Antonio, a part of our service later. Fuller instructions are on the white card, the right printed out card, about what kinds of questions you might want to put on those cards. But give that some consideration because those cards will be gathered and used to decide on questions that we're going to use in this part of the service. So make sure you give that some consideration during our order of service. And you will receive instructions about when to pass those forward as the service continues, okay? Make sure that you are ready to do that. And I think that that's all of the announcements, unless I'm forgetting anything. Nope, I think I'm good. Okay, so with that, we are going to turn to our call to worship as we enter into worship with each other.
Good morning. I'm Jen Ciolino. Typically, I'm not good. I wouldn't share what I'm about to share, but for some context for this service, for everyone who may not know, I will share that I am part of a mixed race family. I have a husband who's black. I've got a 30-year-old daughter who is white from a previous marriage, and I've got 3 mixed race children who are 18 and a freshman in college, 14 and a 9th grader at Walnut Hills, and 12 and a 7th grader at Walnut Hills. So I thought that was important context to have if folks don't know that about my family. So this morning, as we talk about the call to worship, I'm going to share a little bit about my life at home with that family. At home, I'm surrounded by people who won't let me stay too comfortable about race. My husband and children know exactly when I'm uneasy, and they tease me in ways that push me to face it head on. They joke that sometimes I need to borrow my husband's black card for certain words, or they cheer, sometimes a little too enthusiastically, when I manage to say nigga without cringing. Their humor may be irreverent, but beneath it lies a determination to keep me fully engaged with the truth, making sure I feel every bit of the discomfort I need to feel. It's unsettling for me, and yes, it's also a gift of love. In this gathering today, I'm inviting all of us to lean in to that same tension. Notice any instinct you have to pull back, whether from a word, a story, an unsettling idea. Try to resist the urge to smooth it over. That uneasy feeling can be a powerful teacher, a sign we're touching something real. Something might change if we allow it to. We will sing and hear music of significant importance to the African American community. Let us honor our celebration of the path Dr. King laid out for us, while holding in reverence elements of the ongoing civil rights struggle that we are incorporating into today's service. We gather as a community built on love, a place where we can sit in discomfort together for the collective opportunity to experience spiritual growth. When we hold these uneasy moments with care and courage, we deepen our capacity for empathy and understanding within ourselves, among each other, and in the wider world. Come, let us worship. Now please stand as you are willing and able, and join me in reading aloud our covenant. After that, please remain standing for our opening hymn. Love is the spirit of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus we covenant with each other and with God. Our opening hymn today is I Wish I Knew How. In 1952, jazz legend Billy Taylor composed this piece for his daughter Kim. Over time, it became a powerful anthem in the civil rights movement, evoking the longing for freedom, both personal and collective. May these words and melody open our hearts as we continue to seek justice and liberation today.
Hi again. This is the time for all ages, which you might notice now we don't really have any children in our midst. So this is, I guess, right now explicitly for all of you. I want you to think about discomfort. Growing and discomfort go hand in hand. We don't like discomfort. It is something, just by the way it sounds like something we would not want to experience. Discomfort, though, in much of the world, like in the natural world, discomfort and growing go hand in hand. So I want you to think of yourself as a tree, somewhere along the line of the lifespan of a tree. Now, whether or not that means you are the tiny seedling or the seed in the ground, or a tiny seedling that is trying to find its way from the seed to the bright sun, if you're a tree learning to grow, or even if you are a massive tree trying to brave the elements, there is no moment in your life and the lifespan of a tree that doesn't come with some discomfort. It happens in all of our phases and stages. For the tiny seed, the conditions have to be almost exactly right for a seed to sprout. And that sprouting takes a lot of effort on the part of the seed, and it requires that that seed slough off a part of its body, push it into unforgiving ground, and then find its way up through the soil to the sun. There is nothing about this growing that comes easy. And then you hope that if you are that seed that has made it into the bright and shiny sun, that then you will find better conditions. But maybe not so much. Maybe the soil you are planted in is not great for your growing. Maybe there is too much sun or not enough sun, or too much water or not enough water. Or maybe you happen to have found your way into the world through a bit of concrete. A miracle of growing, yes, but a whole lot of discomfort. Now, once we've become a tree, we might think, the hard stuff is done. We are done with those hard things. Now we can just get about being a tree. But that's also not true. The growing of a tree is not easy, and the conditions over the lifespan of a tree are perilous. And as we all see wildfires and changing environmental conditions, the lives of trees are not easy ones. To continue to grow, to prosper, to get bigger, or even just to exist as a tree also requires that the tree find its way through a great bit of discomfort. Now, this lesson from nature should encourage us that discomfort is part of how we are in the world. Discomfort is part of how we exist in the world, and that is actually perfectly okay. That feeling discomfort, that feeling ill at ease, feeling a struggle, we can accept it, we can embrace it as a way of being in the world, or we can fight against it. Fighting against discomfort doesn't necessarily help our growing. Fighting against discomfort means that we are waging war on two fronts, especially if you're a tree. You are waging war against the elements that might want you not to grow, and you're waging war against the discomfort you are having. So all of our trees and seeds and saplings encourage us to be about the work of growing, even if the growing is hard, and to lay down the fight against the discomfort and accept it as part of how we are doing the work of doing our growing. Now, we are not trees, sadly, maybe, for each of us. The discomfort of being people is much more complicated. I want to acknowledge that, while I also say that fighting against discomfort does not always bring us comfort, but sometimes brings us more discomfort. That there is a way in which, if we lean into the discomfort, then we can find strength in it, we can find possibility in it, we can embrace the growth of it. So for our service today, wherever you are on this great journey of treeness, you see the analogy, right? Okay. Embrace your discomfort, lean into it, accept it, find strength in it, and find a way to allow that to strengthen your growth and thriving. Okay. All right. Since we do not have children, we are not going to be singing a children's recessional right now. So now it is the time for our candles of community. One of the ways in which we find ourselves in community where we support each other is by sharing our joys and sorrows, where we share those things that are on our hearts, the things that give our heart weight and that give it levity, the things that bring us joy, and also the things that bring us tears. We bring them together to community, to each other, in our ritual of candles of community. So we There are a few folks who have submitted candles early. I will share those first. And then those of you who are gathered here will be encouraged to come to the side aisles and then forward to share your candles. Please say your name so that we know who you are before you share your candle. And then for those of you who are on Zoom, you will have the opportunity to put your candles in the Zoom chat. And then if there are any there, we will say those last. Okay, so we have 2 submitted candles by email. And then we will light one last candle that for all of the candles that we might have on our hearts that we are unable to express at this moment. Now, we're about to transition to the anthem, but I did want to just give you a bit of instructions here. During the anthem, the ushers are going to pass a basket that will gather your cards. So the basket will be passed silently so that you could put your cards with your questions in the basket, so that we can do that in a way that honors the choir but also gathers your cards. If you haven't already written down your question, you are writing down a question that may have to do with race, discomfort, or bridging our differences. Anything, even that might feel unspeakable, we're going to collect them and then we'll use them in the next portion of our service called Dinner Conversations. So please write your question there and put it in the basket.
Morning. The first anthem we're doing is called Wade in the Water, and I want to give you a little history about that. We are singing the traditional African-American spiritual, Wade in the Water. This spiritual was used to guide enslaved African-Americans on their path to freedom by telling the way to evade detection from hounds and slave catchers by troubling the water, to cover their footprints on the riverbank, and using the water to wash their scent away. I didn't know that. It's cool.
in the water, water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, wade in the water, water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade.
A few weeks ago, I asked someone in our congregation for feedback on an introduction I'd prepared for today's service. In it, I included a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that used the word Negro. The person, responding kindly, suggested I reorder the quote so no one would see that term without first realizing it was King's language, hoping to avoid anyone feeling offended or unsettled. That suggestion came from a place of genuine care, yet it reminded me how quickly we can move to ease tension rather than face it head on. We often soothe our discomfort with internal narratives that assure us we're doing the right thing, instead of asking ourselves why a particular word or truth makes us uneasy in the first place. Sometimes it feels simpler to smooth it over, to spare ourselves and others from the friction of reflection. I remind you that outside our walls, we experienced an amplified version of this same lens. The local school board canceled the annual Diversity Day at the school right next door to us. It was optional, it was for upperclassmen only, and it required parental permission. But the rationale cited was that it brought controversial and divisive topics to the forefront, creating disharmony, creating discomfort. It was canceled because of the fear of facing that which might be uncomfortable. It was canceled because of an entitlement to feel comfortable. But real growth often happens in those moments of unease. When we allow ourselves to feel the tension, we can question our reflexes and see whether they're protecting us from insights that lead to deeper understanding. In this next segment, you are probably going to hear something that creates some discomfort, just knowing my husband. Maybe a word, a memory, a question, but I ask you to please lean in and not back away. Let's treat these moments of discomfort not as hurdles, but as gateways to transformation. So my husband, Antonio, is going to join me for this next segment. This next part of our service is a sampling of a series my husband and I, Antonio, offered, and I realized it was almost 2 years ago now, spring of 23, called Dinner with a Side of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. The format that we created is to create a safe space to ask any question that you might think is embarrassing, inappropriate, hard to ask, or maybe a question you've had for a while on the topic of race, racism, but didn't know who might answer it. So today, we're probably only going to get through a couple of the questions that you provided because of time. We are planning, if there's interest, to host another series this spring. I'm going to be reaching into the basket of questions. I will read the question aloud. You will then get a glimpse into the way we talk about these topics at home as we discuss the question that you asked. We are not holding ourselves up as experts on racial topics. We are just two folks talking. Also, we're going to react candidly, and we have no ill will toward any question asked. Thank you to everyone who courageously offered a question. That act can be vulnerable, and your questions are very welcome. Lacey, I'm going to ask that you keep us to 10 minutes. Let us know when we have 1 minute left so we can try to wrap it up.
Hello?
The word that caused discomfort was Negro. Was that the question you're asking? Yes. Yes. All right, so I have no idea what these say. I have not looked at them ahead of time. I'm going to assume any question that was asked in good faith and with good intent. I will also say that we might make fun of something, because that's what we would do at home. That does not mean that we're making fun of anyone asking these questions. We tend to use humor to play with difficult topics. That is a way that we navigate some of these things. So I just want to say that out front. Like, if we make a joke out of something you wrote, it's not because we are disdaining what was written. I just want to make that really clear to folks.
I hope everyone's comfortable now.
You're funny. Okay, so the first question is, why do some white people touch black women's hair without asking?
So we had this question before.
We did?
We did.
What was the answer?
I'm not a white person, so I don't know. Was the answer? I mean, why y'all do that? But I also know that Ren, who's not here, has had that experience a lot. So it's a thing. I mean, it's a good question. It's a thing, and I can't answer why white people want to touch black people's hair, but thank you, or not. I'd like a little space.
Has that happened to you?
No one. I'm disappointed. No one has touched my. But you don't count. You're not white. What's your question?
I think it's a curiosity thing. My child, when he was like 4, got on the back side of a tricycle. The boy that was riding the tricycle was black, and he was touching his hair.
So for those on Zoom, one of our members of the congregation said that she has seen this experience with her own child who was 4 and was curious about another black child that was playing with them and was touching their hair.
I can see that for young children would be like, hey, this is a different thing in the world, but this is happening with adults.
This has happened in my workplace, in my department, and I had to deal with it when somebody did that to one of my staff. Repeatedly.
And black person, how did you deal with that?
So I was manager person. What I did was I pulled folks together that were involved in it, and I had a conversation. First of all, I told the person that had this happen to them that it was inappropriate for their personal space to be invaded without their consent, and that we were going to handle it. And I talked to the person about why that's inappropriate.
So that's why, apparently.
I remember when Tracy Duest was here, and I don't remember her daughter's name. Tara, yeah. She talked about that very thing.
So Tracy Duest's daughter, Tara, for those that remember, or who were here when they were here, would talk about that same thing happening,
and
yeah.
one of the things she said was, especially when she had lots of braids, many kids at school, at high school, I believe, maybe it was junior high at that time, and she said, I don't mind if you want to touch my hair, but just ask me.
Yeah, just ask, right?
Yeah.
And what I would also say, like even knowing our son Ren, you know, he doesn't like to be touched, period. Right? And so you might think, well, it's curiosity and we understand where that comes from. It's also othering. Right? Because, well, it's not something I'm familiar with and I feel entitled to explore it without your permission.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, and it's often coming from people who don't have that happen to them, so they don't recognize what it feels like. You know, I often use the mosquito bite example because I think sometimes when people talk about microaggressions, because this is a version of a microaggression, right? And so sometimes somebody will name an example of a microaggression and people go, well, you know, somebody's done that to me before too. I'm like, okay, so you got a mosquito bite, but you weren't locked in a stall with 1,000 mosquitoes all biting you. Like, there's a difference between having something happen occasionally and you go, well, I've had that happen, why is it such a big deal? And having that be part of your daily lived experience, that it piles up and it piles up and it piles up. So I don't know why people do it other than maybe curiosity or, you know, it's different, but it also others and it's a violation.
So thank you for your question.
All right, let's see what the next, well, I got a pink one, I'm gonna go with the blue one.
Okay.
Hopefully I can read the handwriting. After reading White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo,
Thank you.
maybe, I haven't read it. I think it's supposed to be good, so it's on my list from years ago. My biggest question is, if any honest disagreement I have is, according to DiAngelo, merely a manifestation of my internalized white supremacy culture, how can I be open and sincere in being a racial ally if any difference opinion isn't being made in good faith, but rather has its origins in my own privilege?
Wow. Okay, thanks for the lighthearted card.
I have a quick answer.
Of course you do.
Not from a black person, though.
Oh, well,
Is your voice, like, more important than mine today?
wow. I'd love to hear your answer without answering your question.
So I have my own personal reflection on this, which is I think that we have, with all intent, to make adjustments based on our learning, right? We always say when we learn better, we do better. I think that we have sometimes gone so far that we are not honoring where different people are in the learning journey. What tree state are we in? Mm-hmm. So a towering tree might see a smaller tree make a bit of a wrong turn, the sun's not over there, and instead of realizing they're on their growth and having that conversation, they're scolding that that was done wrong. And so it starts to create fear. So for example, if I have a difference of opinion and I want to explore that in good faith, if I'm getting scolded for having that difference of opinion and not having that opportunity to sit in that discomfort and truly explore it, it's probably going to push me back down into a shell that says, I don't want to even try to explore these things. Yeah. And I honestly, I saw some of this at General Assembly last year when people were trying to be very intentionally inclusive and offer their pronouns as they introduced themselves, which my son Ren thought helped normalize that and was really important to him. And also someone used an it pronoun, and an assumption was made that that was done in jest. And my son actually sometimes uses it because he doesn't like to use anything that's gendered at all. And so that person was publicly chastised, but we don't know if that person was coming from a place of sincerity or not, and even if they weren't, they were trying to lean into pronouns from where they were. So for me, I see us do a lot of that, where we start to scold each other when we see something that might be something we go, oh, as an earlier tree, that was a mistake I may have made. Now I'm this other tree.
It's an interesting question in that I probably am not the right person to answer it, quite honestly, because it has little to do with how people interact with African Americans, black people. But it is very interesting because it talks about how the culture of trying to break down systemic racism has its own growing pains. And people on that tree, thank you, by the way, for the tree thing, which we are really using today, so it's awesome. as people are growing, like you said, you have different stages of growth, and, now that I'm this and you're doing that, oh, well, I made that mistake too, what the heck's wrong with you? And not honoring people's growth and helping them, and now that you have this, as opposed to saying, don't make that mistake, point. It's go, I understand where you are, let me help you get to where you're trying to go. And that's really hard, and it has nothing to do with what race you are, but how you help other people grow. The context happens to be don't kill black people, but that's a different context.
That was supposed to make you laugh.
Thank you very much for your laughter. I appreciate it. I'll try to be here all week, but I'm not sure I can. Anyway, so it's a good question. Contextually, I don't really have a lot to say other than, hey, humans, try to help each other grow and move forward from there. It is.
One minute. Okay, I'm going to read it really fast, and then we're going to do this is the fire round.
Let's go.
Why did it happen? The prejudice. Why do we other people? This is a boy card, but I don't. Why do we see different people? Color, religion, age, gender, sex, money.
Awesome. I can answer that because we're all different people and we have different lived experiences. And as we grow, we.
Wrong answer.
Oh, it's my answer.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So when it comes to talking about people who look different than you, as human beings, we've grown up going, well, you look different, so there's something different about you. And culturally, we've been acclimated to saying if something's different, something's bad, or something's scary, or something's wrong, or something's going to hurt me, and going back to the conversation about the tree and comfort, we do this because we're trying to find a safe place, other than a cave with some water dripping in the back to live in.
I think that's all true with an added layer of power. So there are those who will leverage that natural tendency to be afraid of something we don't recognize, see, or understand, and build on that fear to keep us othering each other because it enables them to have power.
All right. I'll go with that.
All right, so
Thank
that's
you.
a miniature version. When we did this before, we spent about an hour talking through these questions, and so we're hoping that there might be some interest in doing this again. But thank you for writing the questions, because even the act of doing that is prompting some of that potential discomfort and starting to think about what we should be talking about.
Thank you.
As we continue in the service, I want to take a pause here to have you check in with yourself, okay? To check in with your body, to check in with how you are feeling. Often, the places where we get tight, when our body physically gets tight, that can indicate to us a place where we might want to sort of explore a little more. That when we're having hard conversations, when we're in discomfortable places, checking in with our bodies is a way of checking in with how we are doing. And so really check in with your body and think about, is there a way in which your body has reacted thus far to our service? Are you tight? Is there a place where you feel a lot of tension? Is there a place where your heart might have quickened? Or a place where you felt like you had to hold your breath? Those are all places where your body is telling you something. And if you can identify that experience in your body and what produced that experience in the world, then you can find a place where you can explore further later as a place of reflection. So let's just take 2 minutes we're trying to do 3 things here. Identify a physical experience in your body that you might have had thus far. Think about when it was produced in the service. And then third, what might you want to explore later based upon that reflection? Now that you've done that, hopefully you have a thing, a moment, a piece of information that you can hold on to and that you can sort of engage with later as a place of learning. Now we want to try to get our bodies back to a baseline. Not as a way of avoiding the discomfort, but of acknowledging that when we have discomfort, acknowledging it and owning it is an important way that we grow, but continuing to hold on to it in our bodies might not serve us. So now that you have that piece that we can take away and learn from, try to take deep breaths in and try to release as much as you can that tightness or that experience that you might have had so that you can find yourself back at baseline.
Before I introduce our Sharing Our Abundance, Kevin, did we get the video to you for this? We did not. I realized that that video went between some others of us and might not have made it to you. So unfortunately, we don't have a video. But I will share that for Sharing Our Abundance today, we're going to be giving to an organization it's an offering through Children's Hospital that supports Black mothers to help uplift them and provide them community and resources to help overcome some of the disparities in outcomes in the Black community for Black mothers and Black infants. Far too often in history, white women have aligned with and marched alongside Black women until white women's goals were met, leaving Black women's needs unaddressed. Today, we want to do better. We're highlighting this organization because it directly challenges the systemic inequities Black mothers face, not just in birth outcomes, but in the circumstances that create these disparities. They provide a safe, empowering space for Black mothers to support one another, process trauma, and build a healthier future for themselves and for their children. Our collection today is going to sustain their vital work. By standing with them, we refuse to leave anyone behind.
Civil rights activist James Weldon Johnson wrote Lift Their Voice and Sing as a poem, which was set to music by his brother John Roseman Johnson in 1899. The song is now known as the Black National Anthem in America. It is a protest, a hymn, and a prayer of profound significance for our people. We lift every voice and sing to express ourselves. We lift every voice to show that we have strength in numbers and we will not be silent. We lift every voice and sing to be lifted, liberated, and free.
Freedom, the power to determine action without restraint. Freedom, the absence of or release from ties, obligations, or restrictions. Freedom, the ease or facility of movement or action. Freedom, frankness or boldness in manner or speech. Freedom, a political right. Until we are all free, none of us is free. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter.
That right there on the bottom, that picture on the bottom is my husband at 18 with his mother, and I think he was extraordinarily handsome. Oh, no, he's kind of old now. Before I begin reading them, I want to be clear. The words you're about to hear come directly from my mother-in-law's memories written to her son, my husband, Antonio, and I'm sharing them with her blessing. This is my family's story, our story. And although I am a white woman, these experiences and voices are now part of who I am and what my family holds together. I need you to know that you will hear language that is explicitly racist, including the word nigger. This is not a word I claim any right to, nor do I say it lightly. I say it only because it is the authentic language used in these memories, and excluding it would dilute the reality of that time and its brutality. There is no safe, sanitized way to acknowledge how powerfully words shape what is permissible in our world. We often talk about racial injustice as though it's abstract, historical, or detached from our own lives. But this story makes it concrete, embodied in real people who faced violent threats and life-altering choices because of who they loved and the color of their skin. I invite you to sit with whatever arises in you as I read, discomfort, sadness, outrage, because that response is honest. It's exactly what the truth of this story should awaken. My birthplace was Greenville, Mississippi, July 1st, 1943. My given name was Jacqueline Townsend, spelled with a K. I never knew my name was misspelled until I was around 25, so I continued to use Jacqueline, spelled without the K, Townsend, until I married your father. My home address was 405 Railroad Avenue. I was raised by my grandmother and her sister. My grandmother's name was Viola Crawford. Her sister's name was Ella Jackson. Ella looked like someone from an Indian tribe with 2 long braids and a stocky, round body. Her skin was smooth and brown. My grandmother was my primary caregiver. She was small-built and was your complexion. We called people like her high yellow. Lol. They were both very quiet-spoken and gentle ladies, and I was spoiled. My grandmother must have loved me because my life under her care was very peaceful. If she didn't let me do what I wanted, I used to fake cry until she gave in. She taught me to always look my best. Her words. I do not know who my father is or was. I do remember a man pulling up in my yard while I was outside playing when I was around 6 years old. He got out of the car and asked if I was Jackie. I said yes, and he said that he was my father. I do not remember much else, except he promised to come back and see me, and I have never seen him since. I did not know who my mother was. I never got a phone call throughout my childhood. I do not remember seeing or talking with my mother until I was almost 20 years old. I had wanted to see her for so many years. My grandmother, who raised me, had a picture of her that I looked at daily during my youth. When I became an adult, I researched and somehow I found her. She was living in New York in the Bronx, the first time I sent for her. I was beyond excited, but she seemed very cold and distant. She coughed the entire weekend, and we slept in the same room. I had a 1-bedroom apartment, and Vincent, Antonio's father, was in the military. When he came back, I got pregnant with you, and we separated when you were around 6 months old. I became very ill with a disease called sarcoidosis. It's a first cousin disease to tuberculosis. I did not know at the time that I got it from my mother when she had visited. She had TB. I sent for her again to help me care for you because I was actually bedridden for quite a while. The second time I sent for her, I found out she was an alcoholic and was beyond our bonding. So that was my remembrance of my birth mother. I learned a lot about alcoholics in a short period of time, fortunately. Vincent's family, so a little context. My husband's father His parents immigrated here from Italy, and my husband's father was a first generation born in the United States, Italian. Vincent's family had a grocery store in the nigger neighborhood. That's what we were referred to in the late 50s and early 60s. Although the section of town I lived in was considered middle class, only one white people lived there. Vincent was raised in an environment around non-whites and was attracted to us dark-skinned girls. We were introduced and we fell in love and we had a wonderful time courting. In the 50s and 60s, whites and blacks were not allowed to date. They had just lynched Emmett Till for whistling at a white woman, so we knew the risks. We were young and we were indestructible. As soon as I graduated from high school in 1961, the sheriff called us into his office and gently told us if we continued to see each other, we would be lynched. So we had a choice to stop seeing each other or leave town the next day. We chose to leave town, and the sheriff's deputies escorted us to the edge of town. Fortunately for us, Vincent's family was well known for having a business in the nigger section, and my grandmother hand-washed clothes for the mayor for a lot of years. Those are the reasons we were allowed to live, and as a result, you were born, and now I have grandchildren. We had $100 when we arrived in Chicago. There was a policeman and one of my schoolmates who had just left Mississippi together and published their story to Jet magazine. We found them, and we were allowed to stay with them until Vince got a job. The ex-policeman was white, and my schoolmate was not. That was our saving grace for almost 3 months. A couple of years ago, one of my children had a school assignment to learn a story about his family's history. At the dinner table, we told our children the story you just heard. I was not ready for their reactions. They all three started to cry. And my youngest said, "Why did they want to kill my grandmother?" This is not abstract for our family. It's not ancient history. It's her lived experience. It's why my husband is from Chicago. And it's part of why anti-racism is so important to me. Today, you've heard personal stories that laid bare painful truths, seen how a playful nudge can help us confront our discomfort. We explored how silence and softening can stifle transformation, and hopefully we're reminded through my mother-in-law's courage and my family's real experiences that the struggle for justice is never just theoretical. This very week, our welcoming banner at the entrance was vandalized, a sign of how fragile some people's tolerance can be when faced with messaging they don't want to or cannot accept. Yet here in this church built on love, we refuse to settle for superficial peace. We know that honest engagement, even when it's messy, fosters deep growth. As we move into our closing hymn, let us hold tight to the courage Dr. King spoke of. Courage to face tension, to name injustice, and to live our values in the world. May we sing with hearts open, ready to keep walking the road of truth and transformation. Our closing hymn is a song first recognized in 1952 in South Africa, originating in a church environment as a devotional, which grew to be closely associated with the anti-apartheid movement and that continues today to encourage change worldwide. Please rise in body or spirit as we sing our closing hymn, Siyahamba. Then we will gather around the sanctuary and conclude with our benediction.
Watch out, stand up, but don't come out. Stand up and stay where you are. The first verse we're going to sing in English, and then the next verse we're going to sing the Zulu part. Louise, could you come up and tell the people how to pronounce the Zulu part, and could we show that next slide, Kevin?
So it will go easily once you start to let it flow with the music, but it is Siaham Ben Ku Kenyen Kwen Ko. Sia humba and kukanyen quinco.
Let us join together our hands for our benediction. Yeah. Oh, here, why don't we come this way towards the middle aisle so we can all. All right, we figured it out. There we go. May the Spirit of life, that each of us possesses, flow from one to the other. May it stay with us. And bring us peace and harmony. Until we meet again. Amen.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Ooh.